People don't want to be trained because they don't want to be salesy.
Yeah.
But because they're not trained, they sound salesy. And they don't know they're doing it. So the less trained we are, the more salesy we sound, because there's words that raise sales defenses.
Well, hey there, and welcome to the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. I'm your host, Sam Hind, and it is my honor and privilege to serve you by helping you to grow a business by upskilling and learning from some of the world's best at what they do. Today is absolutely no exception, and it's my honor and privilege to introduce you to Ryan Tuckwood. Ryan is the founder and CEO of SWISH Sales Training. You might recall him from his pitch he did on Shark Tank, where he managed to secure multiple investors in the incredible business that he now runs today. Ryan is passionate about ethical sales training. And if you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to hazard a guess, you're my kind of people who also believe that there is a right way and a wrong way to sell. Ryan is literally a breath of fresh air. With over 15 years of experience in sales training, he comes from a background that you would least expect. He tells a little about this story during this episode, so I don't want to ruin it for you, but let's just say he comes from the bottom. He's learned through experience the hard way how to sell by tapping into not only the psychology of selling, but also by building the all-important relationship, adding value, and having process. I know you are going to find this incredibly valuable. So have your pen and paper ready as you listen into this episode. I know Ryan is going to leave you super excited rather than fearful around the concept of selling to grow your incredible business. So with all of that being said, I'm going to hand over now to this incredible interview that I did with the amazing Ryan Tuckwood. Well, hello there and welcome back to the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. My name is Sam and I'm so excited to be joined by the amazing Ryan Tuckwood, founder and CEO of SWISH Sales Coaching. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you so much. You sound excited, by the way. Thank you so much.
I am actually genuinely excited. This is one particular interview I've, as you know, been looking forward to for ages because we've been trying to make our calendars work, but I am super excited to pick your brain today. So thank you for jumping in.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I don't know where it's going to go, but we'll go somewhere.
Well, I know it's going to go into some fun places here because we're going to talk a bit about Swish and your amazing journey and what you've been up to. And I'm really excited to learn a bit more about that. But, you know, you are, as I guess the best way I could describe you from what I understand is an ethical sales coach. Can I put that word in there, an ethical sales coach?
If anything could go on my gravestone, I'd be happy with that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our whole thing is to change the perception of salespeople and prove that not all salespeople are bad. Some of them, believe it or not, have feelings. So yeah, if that's the way we're introducing, I'll take that for sure.
I love that. Well, you know, as someone who's also got a sales background, and I'm really passionate about sales and sales strategy, and I love it. But you do get a little bit scared, I think, of introducing yourself as a salesperson, right? Because of the judgment that people make about salespeople.
100%. I think you say that I'm an English sales trainer on the Gold Coast, and I'm dressed like this as well. I don't help myself for a start. So there is a stigma, and to be fair, Sam, I think it's probably warranted for the most part for a lot of salespeople. I moved here in 2010. As an engineer, I'd never sold before in my life and fell into the world of sales. And a lot of people that I met were cheesy, sleazy, commission-orientated individuals. So Unfortunately, it has a bad rap. But our whole business for the last 10 years is trying to show that not everybody's the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you might cringe a little when I tell you this, but my first ever job, when I left, I had a lot of experience in direct sales when I was in high school in my teen years. And then I went into the world of, full-time work. And the first job I came across, and this was back in the day when you look through the newspaper and you'd find a job, you didn't go online. There was no such thing as Seek or a website. You went to a newspaper, you opened it up. And the job that I went for said, uncapped earning potential in big, big writing. And then in little writing underneath, it said 100% commission based. And it was a job with a company, I don't know if you've heard of these guys before, called Cobra. Um,
Don't think so.
and they were the door-to-door salespeople. You'd literally pull your car up to a warehouse and they would fill the boot of your car with all sorts of junk. And then you would get a map for that day and a duffel bag, and you would literally walk the streets. And your job was to walk in and cold call on businesses and sell them this stuff. And you made whatever you sold the stuff for over and above the price they said you had to pay them back for it that day. It was intense.
Wow. What I hope that my two boys get a job like that.
It was, I will honestly say, the best, most character building experience I could ever have had. I will also tell you a little secret. I was their top performing salesperson that lasted the longest of any staff member they'd ever had. I lasted a whole month.
Oh, geez. I wondered how many years you were going to say. Wow, that says a lot.
30 days was the longest that they'd had anyone stick around for because of what it was.
Wow.
And when I left, they said, would you like to go and work with one of our partner companies instead, Kirby, that do the vacuums? I don't know if you've heard of them. You know, Kirby.
Yeah.
So I said no to that. I ended up actually going into a sales role that paid a wage. So it was very, very interesting experience. But honestly, I totally agree with you. I would put my kids into a job like that in a heartbeat because you learnt so much so quickly, and you're forced to because you had to earn an income, right?
Well, I don't know if you follow me on Instagram or anything, but I put up a video the other day of my boy dealing with objections with me, my 6-year-old Maverick. And he just, when we go home, he's created this little shop in the playroom, and he says, "Can we do selling, Dad?" He just wants to sell.
I love that.
And there's total side note, but I was an introvert as a kid, and people don't really see that now because I'm very fortunate in what I do and stand on big stages, but that's a learned skill. At 27 years old, I had a debilitating fear of speaking in front of 3 people, let alone 4,000 that I just did in New Zealand in November.
Mm-hmm.
And my kids have inherited those introvert tendencies. So we practice selling, we practice negotiating, tone, timing, we practice controlling a room and asking and commanding a room. And Maverick's teacher at the end of prep last year, he's in year 1 now, she pulled me aside and she asked me if I'd done training with him, and I didn't know if I was going to get in trouble. I was like, "Oh,
where is this going?"
Yeah, I was like, we do a little bit." She goes, "Ryan, I've never in 25 years of teaching seen any prep control a room like Maverick did when he did his show and tell." So we went to Movie World, and as he started his show and tell, and we practiced this, and I didn't think he'd do it. He's gone, so yeah, hey guys, so on the holidays I went to Movie World. Has anybody been to Movie World before? Raise your hand. And she told me this. I was like, this is the best moment of my life. And it's humorous, it's also emotional, but these are the things we don't get taught in schools.
Yeah.
So we're getting set up for failure. I dare say those things you were selling out the boot of the car, some of them might have been good, some of them. But
Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
And we're not being set up for success because kids don't get taught this stuff. So
that's right. Yeah.
It's a journey.
But it's also, and I totally off the track already, I did tell you this could happen, didn't I? But, you know, it's also about setting people up for understanding that, and particularly our kids, I think that's a really good point. You know, that feeling of what do you do when you do get a knockback or a rejection? We're not really primed for that in life. And I think when there's this huge fear of what if someone says no, one of the great things about cold calling is you learn very quickly that no is a number that you need because everyone has a hit rate. And at some point you're going to get a no. So if you chase after those numbers and you go, okay, I know for every, 3 no's, I'm going to get 2 yeses out of every 5 calls. You get excited when, eventually it takes a while, but you start to get excited and you don't take those knockbacks as personal anymore. But it takes, I think, some very, very good training or a bit of, and I'm really blessed I had that life experience. I think a lot of people don't get that life experience where they actually have to learn it through the hard way, but definitely an incredible skill.
It is a skill, and if it's a skill, it can be learned. And that was my evolution of sales. Is just like engineering. It is a skill, and when you learn to harness it and you learn to understand human beings, not selling, understand human beings, great things can happen if you use the kids analogy again. How many ideas never come to life? Kids have great ideas, and I didn't get this until I was a dad. They have the most vivid imagination. They can bring crazy things to life,
Yeah.
but no one's teaching them how to articulate that. So they go all the way through their teens. Their ideas get suppressed because they got to conform. And what are we missing out on in this
Yeah.
world because of ideas that just weren't allowed to be verbalized, or they didn't know how to, maybe because of fear of rejection? I don't know. So I'm very passionate about kids learning this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I love that, and by the way, I love the name Maverick. I think that's an amazing name. But, one of the things that, he's learned in that too, and you talk about the debilitating fear of speaking in front of people. I shared that same fear. I fell into speaking. It was not something I ever set out to do. I didn't kind of wake up one day and go, great, this is exactly what I want to be doing with my life. It was I got asked to come and speak at an event. I remember being backstage thinking, I can't go out there. I can't do this. And I rang my coach at the time and I said, I don't know how you do this. What do I do? And they said, what's your biggest fear? And I said, I'm worried that I won't please everyone. I'm worried that what will people think of me? And she said, well, first of all, it's none of your business what they think of you, and you can't change it anyway. And second of all, it's your job to go out there and impact one person, not everybody in that room. But the thing with, your kids, and this was the fear that I had, and it's amazing that you've taught Maverick this, is when we're speaking, again, it's not about being liked, and it's not about being worried about pleasing everybody. And it's a bit like that with the sales too, of course. It's that fear of, what if they say no? What if they reject what I put forward? And it's the taking of that personally and going, well, hang on a second. It's, first of all, a no isn't necessarily a no, but also you're not rejecting me. You're just rejecting the offer I presented you with, for potentially a number of different reasons, which I'm sure we'll unpack a little more. But I love that you've helped your kids to have that confidence to speak, because I think it is, again, an incredibly powerful skill that any human that wants to be successful in business needs to have.
Yeah, I think it sounds like we've been on a similar journey, by the way. But my public speaking coach, I met him fortuitously in 2018, I think it was. A guy called Harry Singer. He's Tony Robbins' public speaking coach. He's based over in the UK. Same conversation that you had with your coach. What if I make a mistake? What if I forget my lines? What if I trip over? And he just replied by saying, I'm hearing a lot of eyes. It's
Mhm.
is it all about you? Is it? And same thing. Like, can you just what do they want to get out of it? What's the demographic of the room? Similar to what we spoke about here before the podcast. Like, who are the listeners? What industry they're in? What do they want to get out of this today? Really taking the focus off me and putting the focus on everybody else.
Yep.
And I think that's it's easier said than done. I mean, I'm a very process orientated person. I still needed to be told at what part of my introduction song on stage does my left foot leave my right foot? Like, when do I take the first step? Where do I plant? What is the first words out of my mouth? I needed all of that stuff. Some people,
Mm.
some weirdos can actually just walk on stage in front of loads of people and not fear it. But for the majority of us, it's a terrifying experience that can be
Well,
learned.
on that note, that same coach said one other thing to me, and she said, you being nervous is a very good thing. She said, the day that you stop being nervous is the day you stop getting out there, because that's the day you stopped caring.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And that's been a really, like, in the back of my mind every time. I'm like, okay, this is good, as long as we can just control this. And so the lesson for me became, how do I control those nerves so that it's okay to feel them, but it
Yeah.
doesn't impact the presentation that I do. And so I got a little ritual I do now before I go out, and I often talk about it to our members. But it's that process of just learning, and once you get going, you're fine, right? And it's like that with sales too. Once you get in a role, you're fine, but it's, how do you get on the roll, right?
So this is interesting, right? I've been very, very fortunate over the last probably 7 or 8 years specifically to work with some uber successful people. I was in the States recently. I was at an event. Out of all of the speakers, 8 of them were billionaires. And you start to see common themes. The old adage is that success leaves clues. I do buy into that. And the clues was three things. Firstly, that my big takeaway of that particular event in March, was that every single one of them acted with a level of speed like no one else. Right. So the way they could condense idea to execution was so rapid. The second one was that they had an unwavering belief, and the third one, which is what you kind of just said there, is they all had a system. They all have a safety net, or a process or a methodology that they can come back to. So even if I'm fearful, I have a process and a method that I can use as my safety net. And I think that's what people don't have. No one's scared of public speaking, as Harry put it to me. They're scared of public shaming.
Yeah.
But if you have a process, you can minimize the potential downside of that. Same in sales. No one's scared of cold calling. They just haven't been taught to cold call. We cold call. I've got a team of cold callers right now, cold calling, filling an event for me in June because I don't trust marketing companies. That's the right time to say it, but I don't trust a lot of marketing companies.
Yeah.
But I do trust my ability to get past a gatekeeper, keep someone on the phone, articulate value, and sell them a ticket to an event.
Yeah, I love it.
It's a process, and it sounds like that's what you've got there as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm keen to get to that because an event, and this just brings, I've just got more questions that are adding to my big long list of questions here. So we better get into them. But the very first one is actually a little bit around the way that you show up. You know, we've talked about the way that you show up and being intentional about that. And you certainly absolutely come across to me as someone who puts a huge amount of thought into the way that you show up for other people. And I can tell that you've done a lot of work on that. Obviously, you're a big believer in having a coach and someone to keep you accountable. I'm a huge believer in that. I think it's really important. But I'm really curious to know, you know, who's somebody who's influenced the way that you personally show up? Is there someone in your life that's had an impact on you in that way?
I think that there's different seasons that we have that everybody kind of talks about, and I often get asked who's the best mentor or had the biggest impact, and I think it's relative to where you are at your stage of the journey. So, loads of mentors. I've invested over $600,000 in coaching and mentoring, so I appreciate it now, but I didn't when I arrived in Australia. I'd never invested a single cent in personal development, and I thought it was all fluffy. So now I get it. But if I was to go back to its core of maybe who I am as a person, I'd have to look at my dad. My dad, not from a business perspective. Mum was an administrator and a cleaner. My dad worked in a factory. No business desire or entrepreneurial spirit in the family whatsoever, but very, very hardworking. My dad, he's still with us today, but he got sick in 2001. He had stage 4 esophagus cancer, got given literally a couple of weeks to live, and had the longest non-brain surgery in UK history at the time of 23 hours.
Wow.
And he survived, and he's highly disfigured. He lost half of his face, and he's had a lot of ridicule publicly because of that. He gets people literally shout stuff at him in the street, even today.
Wow.
But the way he conducted himself through that, and was able to go, yes, I look like this. I've not been able to work ever since, but I'm still going to show up for my family. He had no grandkids at the time. He's now got 8 grandkids. Has he got 8? I have 10. Hang on, I've got 2.
He's got lots. Yeah.
He's got lots. Done 20 odd years ago.
Wow.
The way he's able to really put perspective on life all of the time, even if back in the day I'm a vain bugger, and I'm like, I've got a spot, and he's like, really? I've got half a face. There's no way you can have somebody that close to you and get upset about the little things. And so he's been great. And then another person that springs to mind, and I didn't really realize this till many years later. When I first moved to Oz, I actually worked in a clothes shop for a while, in Pacific Fair on the Gold Coast. And I worked for a Japanese couple called Hiro and Mia. And they were absolutely stringent about customer service, about going above and beyond, always giving your clients more than they expect to get. If somebody walks into the shop at 5 to 6 or a minute to 6 and you close the doors at 6, you stay as long as they're willing to shop for. And you don't get the vacuum out. You don't give any sort of clues to suggest that we might be closing. This is about them, and everything is the customer backwards. And I didn't realize how much that was going in until I created my own business. And we intentionally talk about wow moments and working from the customer back. And I've had people say this to me, other business coaches and mentors. They're like, you do too much, like you're eating into your margin doing that. You don't need to do that. You'd still get the same outcome. And I've never let it go. I've gone, no, we're going to be known for the 1%ers. We'll make less money slower, but we're going to have day-to-day fulfillment, and we will have raving fans. And I think it's I'd like to think that it's worked over the last 10 years.
Yeah, I love that. I want to know where that customer service has gone, by the way, because it really is, such a
Yeah.
lost art, isn't it?
It's a shame because it doesn't need to cost money.
No.
We do spend money and we do invest in those little, tiny little one percenters. I've got a full customer experience team here that if they had their way, they'd be spending a lot more than we are.
Yeah.
So we have to rein it in from time to time. But it can be a word, it can be a smile, it can be a, a candle that's lit in reception that just creates a different feeling when somebody walks into the office. It doesn't need to cost money, and I think people just get lazy and don't even think about it. They just
Yeah.
think about the dollars.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I want to talk. I've been burning to ask you this question, and you haven't. You told me you got an answer to it, but you haven't actually told me what it is yet. So I'm super excited to hear this. You are all about selling with integrity. I want to know because I suspect that there was some kind of a turning point for you where you had an experience that meant you were like, "That's it. I'm going to stop people behaving like this. I'm going to change the way people do sales." What for you has been the most unethical sales experience you've personally had?
Um, okay, yeah. So my journey was to be thrust into a call center, $300 a day call center. Most people know my story by now, so I won't go too far into that. But long story short, I ended up being bottom out of 21 people for the first 3 months straight. I was literally the worst person in there. I got given an ultimatum by my old boss, and he challenged me to fanatically obsess over the art and craft of sales for the next 60 days. And he said, if you do not move from 21st to 20th, I'll pay for you and my ex-wife now, but my girlfriend at the time, I'll pay for you both to fly wherever you want in the world, knowing that you gave this a really good go as opposed to just quitting. Because at the time, I had 31 cents to my name. I was sleeping on a friend's bathroom floor. Like I was on a lilo or a pool floaty. It wasn't like I felt that I was bad. I was data bad. I was the worst person there. So that little turning point was the point where I said, okay, well, now I don't need to sell. Whatever happens over the next 60 days, this guy's going to pay for my flights out of here, so I can't fail. So there was a point there where I stopped caring about selling. Now that's really important because the second I stopped caring because I already had an out was when I started connecting. And I did read somewhere that your word for the year is connection, and I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
That I I forgot about the commission, and I was like, I've got $300 a day. I've done 330,000 cold calls in my time. Right, that's a lot of people to connect to, and I just looked at every single number as an opportunity to learn something. And by virtue of doing that, I accidentally kept people on the phone. I accidentally kept people talking longer, and I accidentally sold more. And I went from 21st to first in 5 weeks.
Oh my goodness.
Within 18 months, I did $330,000 in commissions, and I was now leading a team of 47. So I'd gone from worst on my way out to running the sales team. And why that's important is then I got to see behind the scenes of the company. I was sitting at the not the board table, but I was sitting at a boardroom table and having more conversations about where the business goes and the customers and the customer success and the support they get. And I started to see a few things that maybe didn't sit well with me. People were talked about as prospects, not customers. Everybody was just had a dollar figure next to their name as opposed to being a human. So little things started to kind of rub me up the wrong way. And then I always used to go on a Saturday. Even when I was sales manager, I'd be in there and I'd still be selling. And I was in one Saturday and there was nobody else there. And we were never allowed to pick up an inbound phone call. And at the time, I never really thought too much of it. We had a customer service team. They deal with that. We focus on selling. But the phone was going on this Saturday, and I thought, I'll just go and answer that. And it was an elderly lady, a lady that I'd sold maybe a couple of months prior. And the product I sold her was $15,000. And she was like, oh, God, Ryan, thank you. I'm so glad it's you that's picked up the phone. I've been trying to get in touch with everybody. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I could see on the customer service board that she'd had touch points, and she was adamant that she hadn't. She said, Ryan, no one's contacted me since. And I just felt sick that I'd taken this lady's money and nobody had contacted her. And I just had this feeling that I needed to call some of my other clients. So I went back through my log of sales and I started to call other people, and disproportionately the same thing had happened. It was like, no one's contacted me, no one's helped me get set up. I've tried to ask for a refund. I've tried, and I was like, I went home to Alicia, my ex wife, and I'm like, I'm done. I can't do this. Like, and I'm making a lot of money, Sam, and I'm probably due a big commission as well. And I went in work on the Monday morning, and I handed my notice in. I got walked out immediately. Didn't even get all my trophies.
And to salespeople, they are very important, by the way.
They were important to me. I had all the records, and I've always been like quite competitive, and I wanted them. But for me, it represented a real milestone and turning point in my life, because I didn't walk out there and go, I'm going to create a business that changes the perception of sales. I walked out of there feeling like I'd done wrong by a lot of people and I'd been misled. And I think maybe in your industry as well, and I have seen this, there's some companies that they are doing great things and they really want to impact for the right reasons, but equally it can work on the flip side.
Yeah.
There's some companies that are taking advantage of people, and they've got people working for them that don't know that they're taking advantage of people. And over the next month or so, that's when I decided, through talking with the co-founder Jack, who's now exited Swish, that we were going to create a business that helps train salespeople and then got them into work as well. And that's what happened in 2014 when we created what is now known as Swish.
Wow, I love that. So it wasn't so much an experience you had as someone on the other end of sales. This was actually your experience being a salesperson, and the company that you're working for. Definitely not what I was expecting you to say, but it is really powerful that you've come into this business going, you know what, I'm not going to settle for people being trained that way and behaving that way. I think that's amazing.
I think the worst thing is, and like Jordan Belfort gets spoken about an awful lot, the Wolf of Wall Street. The reality is, what he taught worked. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone to jail.
Yeah.
If it didn't work, he wouldn't have been able to make the sales.
Yeah.
And this is why it's such a dangerous skill. And there were people that I was working with as well, and they were good people. They were not all scumbags. They were nice people. They had families. There were religious people in there, and they didn't know.
Yeah.
And they were being blindsided. But they had these skills. So I'm like, well, you've got the skills. I had the skills. Can I harness that and use it for the greater good? Is there a better product you could fit somebody into? And that's really what we wanted to create, is can we find these companies? Can we create genuine change at the core, where they have the customer at the start of the whole conversation and they work it backwards? Now, there is a way to articulate your value in the product or service that you have to offer. That's not manipulative. That is your responsibility and your duty of care. If you genuinely, hand on heart, believe in what you have to offer. The second I stopped believing in what I had to offer, my skills went out the window. I wouldn't have been able to communicate it properly because I didn't believe it anymore.
Yeah. You must have had some incredible training to have gone, yes, I know that you there are a few things you mentioned there that you learned by default just because of the circumstance surrounding the challenge that your boss gave you, which was relationship first and selling second. You've gone into it by connecting with people and getting to know them, which is amazing. But in that period, he also challenged you to what was the word that you used?
Fanatically obsessed.
Fanatically obsessed over sales. I want two questions in mind. First of all, did he give you the trip? Did he fly you to wherever you wanted in the world? Or
No, because I went from 21st to first.
I was like, that's almost like, I wish I hadn't been successful. So he would have.
So this is funny, Sam, and I don't know if anybody can relate to this listening or watching this. I didn't want it to work. I didn't want to succeed in sales, because if it succeeded, it meant that I was wrong.
Yeah.
The way the conversation went with him was, I said to him, I was like, Jack, I'm not a salesperson. Like I'm 21st on the board. I've got no money. This is embarrassing. I'm genuinely not very good at this. I'm not an extrovert. I don't have the gift of the gab. And I said to him, sales is not a learned skill. And I honestly, hand on heart, believed that it wasn't a learned skill. So if it worked with, like, I was going through Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, Tom Hopkins, Zig Ziglar, dare I say, Jordan Belfort, all the old school greats and gurus. if it worked, it meant that I was wrong. And I'm a C personality type. If you follow DISC or any sort of
Yes.
personality
Yep.
profiling, I don't like being wrong. So I'd have rather have been right and on the plane home than succeeded, which is just total self sabotage. So fortunately, I was wrong. Um, and now, now I'm here getting to do this.
I love it. So tell us a bit about Swish. If you had to pitch Swift to a 5-year-old in 30 seconds, how would you do it?
To a 5-year-old. So this is how I talk to my boys about this. So
Yeah.
it's quite prominent because they go. I always say, "What does Daddy do?" And they go, "He helps people, and he talks on stage." Right. So then I go, "Do you know what I do?" Right. I ask them, "What are their dreams?" So what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'll say, "I help you do that through using the right words." And that's all it is, really.
Yeah.
It's helping people realize whatever their potential is through the art of communication.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, to a 5-year-old, I just say words. So, and they'll usually have a conversation. I'll say, so you know how you said that word there? You could move that word there, and that's it. And that's it. That's literally what we do.
Yeah.
It's not. It isn't rocket science. And if you stop studying sales and you start studying people, it becomes very, very straightforward.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I love that you mentioned that because, this was something I was taught very early on. And again, I feel like this is a little bit of a lost art, but it's the shifting of one or two words can make all the difference in the impact it has on the person at the other end. I remember an old boss said to me once, and some of those little lessons always stick in your mind. And he reminded me that the brain doesn't necessarily differentiate between the positive or the negative. It just hears the word. And I used to, as I was I went after that cold calling job, I went into a number of other cold calling jobs, one of which was selling gym memberships. And I was actually taught, and this was my unethical experience, I was taught a process. We were given a script and a process. We had to draw specific things on a piece of paper. It was, a T, and we had to draw where they are now and where they want to go. And they taught us, you probably heard this process before, but they taught us your job is make them cry because people buy out of emotion.
Wow.
And they said, if you make them cry, you've got them. And I remember at the time thinking, that doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right that my job is to make someone hate how they feel right now so much that they cry about it. But it was the training that we were put through, and it was a very much so a numbers game, and I was very, very young, and so, kind of just follow the leader, do what I'm told. But I remember when I made those appointments, my boss at the time was listening to me in the background, and I would say, yep, great, I'll see you then, no problems, bye. And he said, I want you to stop saying no problems. I was like, why? I'm telling them there's no problems. It's great. And he said, yes, because what you're actually speaking into them is problems. All they're hearing is problems, not no problems.
Yeah.
I said, okay, no worries. And that's where the no worries started. And I was like, okay, no worries. He goes, same thing. Oh, wow. Yeah. The little things you don't think about, right?
We talk about it a lot on we do phone communication mastery, and how 91% of your influence comes through your tone, not your words. But words still matter because you need the words to carry the tone.
Yeah.
And quite often when we speak to somebody, even take away the phone for a second, even in person, how are you? Yeah, not too bad. Too bad, double negative. Can't complain. Use the word complain. And I joke about it in here, but if my team ever said anything like that, I'd launch at them. Like they go, so Sam, how are you? Yeah. Doing all right for a Monday, or I'm fantastic. I'm amazing. It's Friday afternoon. You basically said, I can't wait to get out of this shithole. Like unconsciously, you've just told people you hate your job. So we often talk about being no more and no less than 10% more enthusiastic than them. I love the adage of what I call the 60-second legacy. That is, the second we jump off here today, the second people stop listening to this podcast, within the 60 seconds that they leave my presence or your presence, they might go and meet somebody else. They might jump in a lift. They might go and speak to a colleague. And somebody says, so what were you listening to then? And they'll go, I was listening to Sam and a guy called Ryan. Oh, what was it like? Whatever they say, that is my 60-second legacy. They're the first words out of their mouth. So if your last words are no worries or no problem, that's your legacy. So I'm very big on making a winning first impression and making a great last impression at the same time. It does matter. Words matter.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I'm really glad that is still actually an art that is being taught. And I honestly think I definitely need a refresher on this, because the world, you do pick things up, don't you? And you subconsciously start saying and behaving in certain ways that you don't even think about, but they're having an impact on the person at the other end. And I would say vast majority of people that I come into contact in the industry I get to work in, most of them are completely subconsciously impacting people. They're not deliberately impacting people. Does that make sense? I
It,
probably didn't say that the right way.
no, it does. And this is the paradox, right? People don't want to be trained because they don't want to be salesy,
Yeah.
but because they're not trained, they sound salesy, and they don't know they're doing it. So the less trained we are, the more salesy we sound, because there's words that raise sales defenses. And
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
there's so many studies on this now, and with the advancement of AI and tools like Fathom or Grain or Fireflies, they can study what words work and what words don't. There was one by Gong.io, and just by asking somebody what their budget is, you reduce your chance of making a sale by 32%. It's true.
Wow.
So and people are still asking people, what's your budget? It's the
Yeah.
most ridiculous question, because what it does is put you back into consumer mode and me back into salesperson mode, and
Mm-hmm.
we don't trust salespeople. So we know that we have to go from salesperson, consultant, advisor to trusted advisor. And we get into trusted advisor status, most of us, by accident, and then we lose it by asking silly questions.
Just so funny you bring that up. It was only a week ago I was trying to hire a consultant to do some work for a one-time project with me. And I asked them for a quote. I gave them the job. I was really happy to pay what needed to be paid because I just wanted it done really quickly. And instead of giving me a quote, they asked what my budget was. And I remember I was thinking to myself, why did my heckles just go up? Why did I dislike them asking that so much? And I remember writing back and going, just give me the quote. And they wrote back and said, it would be a lot easier if you gave me your budget. And I just never went back to them. I went to someone else after that. I didn't even bother responding. And it's really interesting you say that, because it didn't occur to me why that bothered me so much.
And most people, we don't know why it bothers us. We just know it didn't feel right.
Yeah.
And Maya Angelou said that we don't remember what you said or what you did. We remember how you made us feel.
Yes.
And
My
those
favorite
words,
quote, by the way.
but it's so true, because all behaviors are state dependent. And our job as a sales professional, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, is to get people in the right buying state.
Mm-hmm.
And what we accidentally do is get them out of buying state by saying, just following up, just touching base, just circling back round.
Oh my gosh, all those words.
All those trigger words that we've heard.
Yeah.
We're sophisticated as a consumer. We know what that means. You weren't just passing. You weren't just touching base. You're asking if I've had a look at the quote just yet. So
I'm not ringing you to sell to you right now, but
yeah, Ryan, I tell people that I'm not selling to them. I'm like, okay, all right. Can I guess what happens next?
Yeah.
But again, because these people, and this is why I think, like, our members, I don't know if this is worth noting, but 32% of our members are not in sales.
Mm-hmm.
They're not in a direct transactional role. They're in customer support, retentions, HR, people and culture. And 42% of our members are women these days, which is unheard of for a sales training company globally.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we rebranded to Swish, selling with integrity, selling honestly. Although we're still using words and learning how to use them intentionally, we're not doing it to manipulate. And once people get over that, they're prepared to learn the skills. I think there's just such a resistance to wanting to learn how to sell because they think it's going to make them sound more salesy.
Yep.
It does the complete opposite.
Yeah, awesome. We've talked a lot about mindset. I'm really curious to know what for you, in your experience, would be the number one mindset shift that someone makes when they go through Swift training that changes the game for them?
That's a good question. I think two parts. Firstly, you can only sell to which the degree you are sold. So I can be very direct with people in a sales interaction or on stage, because I've had 21,500 people go through our training at Swish. Right, we know this works now. Mm-hmm. So I'm 100% sold on our methodology. So firstly, you can do all the mindset hacks in the world, but if you're not 100% sold on the product, it doesn't matter. So you got to know that you're prepared to pay whatever you're asking somebody. I had my head of customer experience, Lorna, she recently moved into sales, and there's challenges that come from servicing clients to selling clients on the front end and actually asking them for the money as opposed to looking after them once they've paid the money. And she was at an event either last week or the Friday before, and she says, "I'm running to the back of the room. Should I buy?" and I said yes. She goes, "You don't even know how much it is." I said, "I don't care. You need to get used to being the customer that you're looking to attract.
Yeah.
So get your credit card out and pay for whatever it is." And she did, and comes back in here, talks to clients, totally different shift.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got to look at yourself, always look at yourself first. If you're struggling to ask people for the business, if you're struggling to speak on stage, if you're struggling to afford things, and then you're annoyed that people give you those objections, usually we're projecting. So have a look at ourselves first and go, can I become the customer that I'm trying to attract? I need to make decisions quicker? I'm a procrastinating buyer. I'm a C personality type.
Yep.
So I hired a decision-making coach years ago because I was a good decision maker, but I was a slow decision maker. So the doors of opportunity would close on me by the time I made the decision. So learn to trust yourself. If you are a procrastinator and you haven't learned how to trust your own judgment just yet, great exercise that my old coach got me to do was, whatever decision you're about to make, you can audit this for a month or 2 months. Just go, right, from today, every time I make a decision, I'm going to note down, what did my gut say, right? So my gut said, yes, do it. Now, don't make the decision, then go through your normal thinking pattern. So for me, it was sit on it, sleep on it, talk to my investors, talk to my partner, go and do a risk analysis, do like all this, like just overthinking it. And then I would come to my conclusion. I'd make a note. What was the final decision? Next decision. Okay, my gut said yes. Think about it. Blah, blah, blah. 82% of my gut decisions proved to be right in a month. So what I did through data was prove that I'm actually a good decision maker with my gut.
Yep.
So for me, I don't know if that's a mindset hack, but it was something that I needed as quite a logical and a rational person. And then the final thing, and again, it sounds a bit cliche, but you need to have a reason way beyond you. We do goal setting training with companies and individuals, and we see an increase in sales with no sales capability training whatsoever. We just do a holistic approach to goal setting. We show them how they can create it in a way that actually motivates them daily, because otherwise, what's the point, right? Asking people tough questions is hard. Following a new process is hard. Getting rejection is hard. But there needs to be something greater than just making money, because that's not going to motivate you forever.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. So, you made mention that sales is a learned skill. And for sure, I think some people are born with certain capabilities that might make it easier to learn. But you made the point, which I 100% back, and that is that anyone can learn to be a great salesperson, even a C-type personality. So I want to know, what for you do you believe is a skill that anyone can master that will make them better at selling without being salesy?
I think there's two things that we really need to be able to do, and it comes back to that all behaviors are state dependent. That's the kind of the overarching SWISH principle of our methodology. So people will do or not do something based around the state of mind that they're in that moment in time. So our ability to disarm prospects and get their sales defenses down is really, really important. There's a couple of ways that we do that, and if there's anybody listening that speaks on stages, great one that I got taught by Harry, was just a really simple lead-in statement, which goes, before we begin. What that tells everybody is we haven't started just yet. So there's been studies on this as well about cortisol levels and stress levels in customers' interactions with salespeople. There are highest levels of cortisol at the start of the interaction, at the end of the interaction. So their sales defenses are higher at the start and the end, so it's bookended. So when I say something of the likes of that, before we get into it or before we begin, instantly you see those cortisol levels come down. And that's really important scientifically, because cortisol blocks our ability to think rationally and logically by closing off our frontal lobes. So if I'm going to deliver something rational, I want it to go in. I don't want it to miss the mark. So we call it persuasion. I don't know if you've read the book Persuasion by Robert Cialdini.
I haven't, but I'm going to now.
Really, really, really good reads. And the principle of persuasion is the words you say before the words you say matter.
Yeah, so good.
And that can be as simple as before we begin, or I'm not sure if this is for you, but like you probably won't be interested, but it just softens the lead in. So I almost take it off you before I tell you. And now you like, hold on, now I'll tell you if I'm interested or not. And then you lean in. And it's so simple, and anybody can learn this.
Yep.
And then you can learn it just from listening to that straight away. And then the other thing is getting your questions in the right order. So before we even talk about what types of questions to ask, or tonality, timing, pitch, pausing, stutters, all of that stuff that can be added on top, just get them in the right order. So
Mhm.
if I'm in a discovery or consultation with somebody, make sure that our questions go backwards before they go forwards. So talk to me about what you've done previously. Where are you at right now? Where do you want to be in the future? So we have 3 stages: past, present, future.
Yep.
We have stage 4, which we call cost of inaction.
Mhm.
This is the bit that most people miss, and you kind of touched on it earlier on, because it's the bit where they sit in the pain. As much as I hate this, any baseline human behavioral studies will tell you that people will move for 2 reasons: to move away from current or future potential pain.
Yep.
So 90% more driven to move away from pain than we are towards potential future pleasure. So we have to go past, present, future, cost of inaction. So what are the ramifications of them not moving forward? And the final stage, we call it partnership question, where we ask them how they're going to choose a provider of XYZ, whatever the service is. So if anybody listening right now, just audit your questions. Have a look at whatever questions you're asking. Don't change them, but just ask yourself, am I going backwards before I go forwards? Because if you do, you create a gap. The bigger the gap, the bigger the urgency. What most people do is they jump on a call or a Zoom and they go, say, hey, Sam, how can I help you? What are you looking for? Now, the customer is going to go forwards, which means
Yep.
it's impossible to create a gap. So you go, oh, well, look, I want to earn more money. I want to have more time off. I want more freedom. And you go, perfect, we can help you with that. And you just straight into pitch mode. What we need to go is, before we get into that, Sam, we will go through all of that. Just talk to me about your background for a second. Give me a little bit of context. What have you tried before to solve these problems? What coaching have you done before? And also, when you do this, you remove the chances or reduce the chances of you patronizing them through talking over them and telling them something that they've been doing for the last 20 years, which I hear a lot and
Yeah.
just gives anxiety.
Yep. Yeah, that feeling, I guess, that people have of, well, I've been there, I've done that, but you wouldn't know that because you don't have all the information. And of course, you're almost getting reprimanded for something that you didn't know you were doing.
It's so and new staff do it.
Yeah.
They join your company and they go, hey, you should be doing this. I'm like, do you want to ask me a question first? And they'll go, have you tried it? I'll say, yes. Do you want to ask me why we're not doing it? Okay, let's have that conversation. I love the acronym TOGA, knowing when to take or give advice. And
Yeah.
it has to be done in context.
Yep.
And that's another persuasion is, look, as you probably already know,
Yep.
as you'd probably be aware of this already, but just for the listeners, it just makes sure I don't patronize you.
Yeah. I really love what you're saying about questions, because for me, this is, again, part of the training I got later on in my experience, and I've used all the way through my career. And I think this is definitely an area that I'm always wanting to improve on, because I realize how valuable it is the questions that we ask. I remember one of the roles that I had, I actually, it was my job to sell advertising space for one of the biggest print marketing companies in Australia. And I did that for about 11 years and I was performing really well. But our job was objection handling vast majority of the time. And it's a hard thing to do, especially when you're dealing with, in some cases, customers that our company had been trying to land for over a decade, and they're still giving the same objections over and over. And our job, we had to approach everybody every single year. So every potential client had to be approached regardless of how it was left the year before. And we actually had to be able to report back that we had had a conversation with them on what happened in that conversation, so that we could get the correct sales objection training. All of that to say, what I learned and what they kept drumming into us over the years, and it was a really powerful tool, was don't worry about answering the objection. if you don't have the answer yet or you're not getting anywhere yet, ask another question, because the questions are going to unearth what it is that they're actually really asking, or
Mhm.
what their objection really is, which usually isn't what they say. So when they say
Yeah.
it's about money or it's about time or whatever it might be, often there's something else going on. And sometimes they don't even know what it is until they uncover it. And for me, it became like this: all I have to worry about is being a master of asking great questions. Um, do
Yeah.
you like, sorry, how do you help people? I'm guessing that you help people be better at asking questions, right? Because it's not about the answer they give, it's about what they're unearthing.
It's I think I love saying that the best salespeople don't have the best answers; they have the best questions.
Yeah.
And it's like a psychologist. I didn't realize I was doing this, but when I went through the past, present, future method, the SWISH methodology, the whole thing is a 10-step process called the negotiation ladder. But then stage 4 is the discovery. And I was coaching. I won't tell you their name because I can't. But they're a drug rehab clinic, and an addiction clinic. So they deal with people that are suicidal. They're weaning off drugs, and it's $40,000 to $50,000 a week to stay there. So it's a very, very sophisticated rehab clinic. And I was coaching their intake managers, their therapists, their clinicians. And I was going through this. This is how you ask the question. So usually it's a family member or a loved one that inquires, said, look, my brother, sister, mum, dad, whatever is struggling with this addiction. We're thinking about sending them over to you guys. And I said, yeah, you got to ask questions in this order. And then at the end of it, the lady that runs the place pulled me aside and she said, Ryan, where did you learn motivational interviewing? And I was like, I don't think I have. She was like, that's literally what you just did there. That's what they teach the therapists to do. That's what they teach clinicians to do in psychiatric wards and psychologists. And it's because what they're trying to do is facilitate change. They're trying to teach people away from suicidal tendencies, from drug use, from addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're trying to change, what we're trying to create is change in a human being. And we can take it to the extreme of suicide prevention, or we can talk about a pen, buying a different pen.
Mm-hmm.
It's still change. So if we understand how human beings are wired, we got to ask questions in the right order. So yeah, one of the big things we focus on is across that whole 10 stages of the negotiation ladder, getting those questions in the right order, which is why, to your question, it's one of the easiest things that we can look at right now, because 90% of people, if I was to listen to their calls, watch their Zooms, go and sit in a meeting with them, they're asking future paced questions only.
Yes.
That is it. They're not going backwards first. So we don't get an opportunity to create the gap.
Mm-hmm.
And then what they're missing out is stage 4, the cost of inaction questions. Um,
Yeah.
People have to sit in the ramifications of not doing. And
Mm.
it isn't the fun part, but it is where transformations created. And we as a sales professional, again, come back to, you got to be 100% sold on your product, because I have a duty of care to sit in awkwardness with you
Mm.
and not feel comfortable, because I know I'm doing this for the right reasons. I'm doing this for you. I'm not doing this to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important distinction.
You know, it's really interesting where you're going with that, because I think there's a lot of people who are trained to be amazing at sales that don't believe what they're selling. And so the skill, it becomes all about the sales skill, because they have to ignore the fact that they're not passionate about their product. I think that's done a lot of damage in itself. But a lot of the people that I come across that we get the honor and privilege to coach inside of our programs are coming to us and they're afraid to sell or ask the questions or do what it is that they've got to do. And I realize that the thing that they need to be convinced of first is not that they're good at sales, is not that they've got the skill. They actually need to be convinced first that their product is worth selling and is needed before they go speaking to anybody. And we give them a little exercise where they have to write out, if I'm being really mean, I'm dealing with my inner circle people, I'll make them do 200 of these. Anyone else, I'll give them 50, because they'll just like quit before they get there. They have to write out 50 reasons why what they're doing is important to the world and
Nice.
convince themselves. And what ironically happens almost every time is they don't change anything about their skill set and they suddenly start improving in their results. But it's not because their skills change, it's because their own conviction has changed. And it's
Yes.
just like what you're saying there. You show up with a different energy, don't you, when you really believe in what you're selling?
It took me a while. it took me a while to get that, because even me as a coach, like, you won't see anything of me on YouTube, on socials, in our training academy from 2014 to 2017.
Yep.
Right, I'm happy to be the introvert behind the scenes. I'll be the little borrower that's just the worker bee, if you will, and Jack
Yep.
was the face off.
Yep.
And truth be told, it was because I wasn't confident that people should be paying me for training.
Hmm.
And it took me 3 years of coaching people behind the scenes before I went, I'm actually pretty good at this.
People need what
These
I'm
guys,
doing. Yeah.
some people seem to be getting results here. This is
Yeah.
actually working. And now, 7 years on from that period, and I've been putting it out there long enough, and been fortunate to do what I do. I'm like, okay, now I have a responsibility to hit as many people as possible.
Mm.
How can I do? Not everybody's going to have their lives changed. Like, we'd be naive coaches and trainers to think that they would. But I do have a responsibility to be able to hit as many people, and at least try to change as many people's perception as possible.
Yep.
And when you get to that stage of, you use the right word, it's conviction. The people that are listening to this right now, they will as well. If you 100%
Yep.
knew something was going to work for someone, and you also categorically knew they needed it, you have to make it happen. You don't buy into their stories of, I can't afford it, I've got no time. It's like, none of that matters.
Mm.
It doesn't matter. If it was a family member and you had a medication that could save their life, and they told you they don't have time to take it, you would force it down their throat. And I mean that with love as
Yep.
well.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. I love that. It does make me wonder, though, how some people can be so great at what they do when you know they don't believe in what they're doing, right?
You got to sleep at night at some stage.
Yeah.
And some people, they still do, but that's just not the way I'm wired. And all
Yeah.
power to them if they want to do that. That's just not the world I want to get pulled into, and I
Yeah.
have been pulled into it several times. I had a real estate investment company for 3 years, and there was a few characters that were coming into my world that I wasn't comfortable with. I walked away from it. I've spoke on stages where there's been real high pressure selling from those stages, and it's not something I want to be associated with.
Yeah.
And I walked away from it.
Interesting. I actually, one of my first exposures to you, Ryan, was a post that you wrote about selling on stage. I think you were pulled into an event where the focus wasn't on the value being provided, and tell me if I get this wrong, but it was on people being sold to at the end, more so than the value they walked away from. Yeah, this is a really common thing that happens. But what's the difference between that and, say, something where there is an opportunity presented on stage at the end? And we've all seen that as well. I mean, you've got the likes of, say, Tony Robbins, who do a lot of training, but at the end of every Tony Robbins event, there's going to be a hardcore sale at the end of that.
Yeah.
Do you see that as being unethical, or is it really there's a line?
I think, when you get exposed to behind the scenes too much.
Yes, I do.
And you definitely do, right? And you hear the conversations,
Yeah.
and again, it's people are talked about as units and numbers, and they're not talked about as human beings
Yep.
that have feelings. I slept on a bathroom floor. I had 31 cents. I was a backpacker. If I told you I didn't have $100, I did not have $100, right? I'm not lying. Don't try and make me cry and feel like my life is crap because I don't have $100. I literally did not have that. And some people don't have access to funds. And I don't buy into I'm going to make you feel like your life is shit.
That make you cry to join the gym type mentality.
The buy, die or cry Jordan Belfort strategy. I don't buy into that. I think I'm a big fan of permission-based selling, not interruption-based selling.
Yep.
So we run events, people come to our events, and we will always get a portion of people that say, hey, how do I continue the journey? What else? What can we do with you next?
Yeah.
So we make time to have that conversation, but what we do is anybody coming, we tell you, guys, we're going to spend 5% of our event talking about continuing the journey. We're going to do it at 12:30. It's going to go for 20 more minutes of a 7-hour event. So if you want to stay for that, you can. If not, go for lunch. Come back at 1:30.
I love that.
So
yeah.
We ask for permission. Now, obviously, it's my job before we get to that stage to give you so much value, actually give you value, that you want to stay and listen to it.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to weave it in subtly to my conversation, and you don't know about it, and then I tell you to stand up if you're having fun, and then you're told to turn around and run to the back of the room, and you've got 3 minutes to take action. That nobody has 3 minutes to take action.
Yeah.
And you actually asked me earlier on, what unethical practices have I seen? That's one of them, because I've purposely bought from many of those companies weeks after and got the same offer that was on stage for 3 minutes only.
Yes,
So,
I know, right? It's
so putting a false timeline on
yeah.
something,
Yeah.
we don't need to do that. I mean, I'll do offers from stage, and I'll run incentives to reward people that have made the effort to come out for events. But you'll never hear me say, guys, you got to take action now in the next 5 minutes. Let's put a countdown timer up. I'll go, guys, you're all adults. We got a website. If we've given you enough value today, some of you, I'll go around the disc grid. I'll go, some of you are direct and intuitive and you know what you want. Some of you like the energy that we've created, you'll go and buy. Some of you want to go and sleep on it. Some of you want to go and talk to your friends. Some of you want to go and check your finances. All of that is cool. So this offer is going to run for another 7 days. If you want to talk to one of our team, you can do. Like, so I'm not against promoting your products because you can't sell a secret. I'm against ramming it down somebody's throat and creating a false urgency that it just causes buyer's remorse. I know the refund request rate, the administration on the back end is a nightmare. We don't get any of that. And I don't want anybody in my training under duress. I want you to do it because you want to do it. Because then I'm the best at you.
Yeah, so true. And I love something you just said then. You said you can't sell a secret. I just want to touch on that for a moment, because another behavior I see from people a lot, particularly the people I get to work with, is that they're afraid to ask for the sale. They're afraid to tell people about what they have because they've seen that churn and burn. They've seen that, hound and hassle way of being, and they've gone so far the other way that they're afraid to tell anyone about it. And they make this assumption that no one wants to hear about what they have, or they would have come to them. But the thing is, people don't know what you're doing because you're not talking about it. How do you, I'm guessing that you come up with this a lot, particularly if you're dealing with people that maybe are in customer service or administrative roles, because that sharing, that talking about the product, the business opportunity, the whatever it is that they have can be quite a confronting thing for them to do. What are some of the things that you do to help people overcome that?
I think firstly, you need to categorically know they need your services before you bring it to the table. So again, it comes back to the questions. If we talk about stage 5, negotiation ladder, transition to justifying and presenting.
Mm-hmm.
If I can't say the words based on the fact that, then I shouldn't be presenting. Because what I'm going to say is, based on the fact that you said this earlier on, I'd be doing you a bit of a disservice if I didn't let you know, and then I go into whatever my product or service is. So my whole aim is to get to that stage of based on the fact that. To get there, I need to ask the right questions at the right time, in the right tone, with the right depth.
Yeah.
Once I've got that information, again, and you're 100% sold, you have a duty of care and a responsibility to bring that to the table.
Yep.
The second one is we often friend zone prospects and clients. That's a big thing.
Yep.
And I created something years ago, and I don't know why, but I still do it physically with my hand as well. I often use the adage of like talking it down the pub with somebody. If I'm talking with my mate and let's say I've got a lot of business owner friends, if they're struggling with sales and they're verbalizing the business is struggling right now, and I don't already coach their teams, I have to tell them I can help them with that because I know I can. Like, I have to. So if somebody's struggling with their health and wellness and you're sitting down having a meal with them and you can see them wheezing or they've got a breakout in their skin and you have something over here that can help them, you have to tell them. Yeah. So the way I transition to that so I don't feel icky is by going, hey, Sam, can I just put my business hat on for a second? And for some reason I do that. Can I just put my business hat on for a second? Because there was something you said to me earlier on, or there was something you said to me last week, or based on the fact that you just said that, I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't let you know that we can help you with that. Now, you probably won't be interested in talking about it. This is probably the point where you tell me, hey, no, I've seen it all before. But if you'd like, I'd be happy enough to talk you through it. So there's a few little combinations in there that you can see.
Yeah, really powerful. And anyone can do that. I think that's really interesting what you say about friend zoning too. One of the biggest focuses we make with our members is building the relationship, because you have to care about people and they have to know that they matter more than the sale, right? So, it's that concept of well, if this is how much they do for me and if this is how much they care about me before I'm paying for anything, how much are they going to look after me when I am? And
Yeah.
so that then can lead to that feeling of, well, now I've got such a relationship with this person, I don't know how to broach the business side of things. So that's a really great transition, a really powerful one. I'm going to use that. I think that's awesome.
Get your business hat on. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I'm just going to put my business hat on. I love it. I used to have it's a friend of yours and mine, Celine, who's also been on this podcast a few times, used to say, I'm just putting on my mama hat right now, or I'm putting on my Juice Plus hat right now. And I knew that the conversation that's about to follow is either a mum talking to or it's a business conversation. So,
But again, what does it come back to? We're changing state.
yeah,
All behaviors are state dependent. I keep harping on about it. We do it in here as well.
yeah,
So we have regular meetings with like my C-suite, and then they have meetings with their team, and it will be like, what type of meeting are we having? Are we having a boss meeting, or are we having a friend meeting?
yeah,
What are we having?
yeah.
And just the phrase changes the way the next words are heard, which is really,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, so good. Okay, so I want to know, this is a question that I think is going to help all of our listeners right now. I'm sure you've got lots of answers to this one. So I'm really keen to hear what your top tips are here. But I think that rejection side of things can really get on top of people, especially when they haven't. Like you and I have been exposed to a lot of cold calling, and I think you become a little bit numb in a sense to the no's because you understand it's just part of the process. But for those who haven't had that experience, and that would be vast majority of people, how do you recommend people keep their energy and their belief high when they're not getting results yet? So maybe they're just at the start of their journey, maybe they've just begun in business, maybe they have been doing it for a little while and they're getting the no's, or they're not seeing the results on the board. How do you recommend they keep that energy up? Because energy obviously is infectious and it will make a big difference. So what can you suggest to people? What are your top tips in this space?
I think firstly we have to normalize it. I'm not. I don't really buy into it's a numbers game. I think it's a skills game, and I
Yep.
think I mean, if you can have great numbers and great skills, then that's always the bonus. Which is why I still, even when I was managing, I'd still have the most activity on the phones. I'd still be in on the Saturday because I'm like, well, why wouldn't I? Because it's going to increase my numbers. So I think normalizing it, as in everybody goes through this journey. One thing that I think should be taught in any business is the 4 levels of learning, which again you'll probably be familiar with: the unconsciously incompetent, consciously competent, blah blah blah. That needs to be taught so that when we do hit that brick wall, or for me, cold calling 300 dials, I'm like an hour into the role going, guys, is anybody else getting loads of abuse here today? Like, no one told me,
Mm.
which makes me feel crap.
Yep.
But if they told me this was going to happen, at least I can kind of pre-navigate it. So I think normalizing it there is really, really important. The lesson that I got from my old boss back in the day was, Ryan, you speak to 300 people a day. What an opportunity that is to learn from 300 strangers. What are you going to
Yeah.
learn today?
Yeah.
And I said it to my cold call team last Monday, a week ago. They started calling for our event, our tour in June, and they're going to make 40 to 50 dials a day, which is not a lot in retrospect. But
Mhm.
I said, guys, that's 50 lessons you can get a day. So who can find the weirdest bit of information today? And one guy found out that one of the guys had a son named Fox, the same as me. We've never known anybody that's got a kid called Fox. And coincidentally, the same guy that had a son called Fox bought 10 tickets. So is it a coincidence, or is it because we focused on connection over commission?
Yep.
So going into interactions to learn and try to find out an interesting fact about people, it takes all the pressure away from making the sale. And if you do that, you'll find out not only some great things and learn some great things, but people open up to you. People can see through a sales approach. They can
Yeah.
see through um, loaded questions, assumptive closes, all the 1980s crap that we still get taught often.
Yep.
So I don't know if that helps, but there's a couple of things that I'd consider.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, one of the things that I used to do, and you touched on this, was gamifying it. So you talked about, what's the weirdest piece of information you can find today. But I used to find lots of ways to gamify it and make it as visual as I could. And that always used to work really well for me as well.
I think you said it before as well, so it might be before we started, but having a regulation piece. So how do you reset yourself? So
Mm.
I met a guy called you might know Michael Crossland. You know Michael?
No, I don't.
You know, you would love him, right? Okay, so he long story short, he was born with a rare form of cancer. We got given 1 year to live. They trialed a drug on him and 25 other kids around the world. He was the only kid that survived. Uh,
Wow.
Burnt from the inside out, no immune system, but still with us here today. And he's got two amazing kids. He's become a good friend of mine. He speaks at my events, and he speaks on stages in front of 20, 30,000 people, but he's very unassuming. And I remember when I first met him, I said, "You don't seem like somebody that speaks on stage in front of all these people. How do you do it?" And he said, "Oh, I've got this 3-step process that just allows me to regulate." So basically, I borrowed his process. I turned it into an acronym that I now call MAP, which is basically meditate, appreciate, practically activate. So for me, if I need to reset between rejection, frustration, or before I go on stage, you said you had your little thing.
Yep.
I'll stand at the side of the stage. Often people, if they're watching, they'll see me just I don't meditate. I just take a moment, and it's 60 seconds.
Yeah.
Appreciate. I think of the same thing all the time. My dad and my two kids. And then practically activate. Just jump up and down, get the blood flowing, get that oxygen to my frontal lobes, switch on logically, so I remember what I'm supposed to say when I first walk out there.
Yeah.
So having something, I don't care what it is, as long as it's not cigarettes and alcohol. Just who cares? Whatever.
I have seen people sculling booze backstage, by the way. So
Speakers, have you?
Don't recommend it, but I have seen people do this. And like you, I've got it's funny. I do exactly the same thing, but I've got a different terminology for it. But I'll do the same thing. It involves priming. It's a bit of gratitude, and I end with I talk to people about my Game On song, and I'll be backstage dancing like an idiot.
What's your song? What's the song?
I've got a playlist now, but my initial one was "Jump" by Van Halen. That was my just do it, right? But now I've got a whole playlist of songs, and I will just put it on. And I've had a company CEO that's hired me walk backstage, and the look, like I turn around, I've been sort of bouncing up and down, bare feet, jumping, just trying to get the energy up. Turn around, and they're staring at me like, "Who is this lunatic we're about to put on our stage?"
But it's the same, isn't it? Right? It's the same whether you walk out on stage in front of 10 people or 10,000 people, or whether you're calling one person or calling 10,000 people.
Yes.
We do need to reconnect to the reason we're doing it as well. So walking out on stage, you're going, okay, who's in the room? What are they here for? They've left their family, their friends. They've flown in from Tassie to wherever. Like, people have made an effort to come here.
That's right.
I know if we're calling somebody on the phone, they've still taken time out of their day to pick up their phone.
Yes.
It's not their job to respect you. It's your job to earn their respect. Just stick to their time.
I love that.
So when people are rude to you, why are we surprised? Like, you just called them out of the blue. So learn how to master the phone, how to gain their attention, earn their attention. And think, if I speak to 10 people today, that might be 10 people now that I just left some form of positivity in their life, even if they were rude. They will go to bed going, they didn't argue back with me. They weren't rude to me. You never know. You never know who you're going to impact.
That's exactly right. And I've got to ask you, and I know that we've gone over time, but I could honestly talk to you, I think, all day here, Ryan, about this stuff. It's super, super powerful, and I think our listeners are going to be lapping this up. But I've got to ask you about AI right now. There are a lot of AI tools going on out there, and specifically tools for sales. And I think it's very easy for people to go, "Oh, that's easy. I don't have to do it. There's AI could do it for me now." How do you feel about the AI tools out there now, and how do you think that we keep integrity front and center while using them, or should we be using them at all?
Oh, Sam, I'm in the rabbit hole. It was bad timing.
And an hour later, we finished the
Well, I'm not. I'm technically challenged, shall we say? So I got my first computer at 30 to start this business. So I never had a computer until then.
Wow.
So
okay.
I feel like I'm a late adopter, but apparently I'm getting quite advanced with what I'm looking at. So I've just got a quote right now to build my twin and to create a 24/7, 365 Ryan coach for our members. But at the same time, we're also going to create twins of every single staff member. So we're on the cusp of doubling the size of our company with employing one AI bot for the price of one staff member.
Wow.
Uh,
Yep.
so why is that? Why is that important? Because what we can do is get data instantly without any team members being around. Like the amount of work that we can get done. I've seen the proof. I've seen the data to increase productivity by 62% within a week. So I think there are great uses for it for our members at the minute. Our member base is all around the world. They can't all jump on my live training. We do live training 3 times a week, depending on where you are in the world. The
Yep.
times don't always suit, but imagine if they could actually do this right now, and they could ask a question. They could go into a sales call, and they would go, "What would Ryan say with this objection?" And I could literally give them genuinely the way I would respond, and they get it 24/7, 365.
Wow. Okay. That's
And
amazing.
that can be built. We're building that right now. So I think that they're great. I like, as I said earlier, the note takers, Fathom on Zooms. Really great data from a sales perspective to tell me who's doing the most talking. Did you ask the right questions in the right order? So we can tag conversations. So if I'm training salespeople, I can tag past, present, future, cost of inaction, partnership. So before I even watch your recording, if you worked for me or I was training you, I could go, I know why this hasn't worked out the right way because you didn't ask questions in the right order, and it will just tell me. So I think there's a lot of tech out there. We can hate it or we can embrace it. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
What I think we have to do is be very, very transparent. And even when I'm on Zooms or I'm recording it, I'll tell them, "Hey guys, my recording right now is taking all the notes for me, so I don't need to, so I can just be fully present with you. And at the end of it, it will summarize it and I will condense it so it's fully tailored, but it gets quite close." And I think that's okay. I think as long as you're telling people that this email is semi-automated through AI, but what it means is I can get it to you in about 6 minutes instead of like 6 hours,
Yep.
because I don't need to. It can listen better than I can listen.
Mhm.
It's
That's
it's
right.
it's scary, but it's great at the same time.
But it's such an important point that you make is, these tools are here, and I'm constantly telling people these are about enhancing you, not replacing you. So
Yeah.
it's allowing you to be the best version of you, and if used properly, it can make you more productive. But there is a balancing act there, right? Between, are you doing that, or are you procrastinating? I think that,
You said it perfectly. You've got to learn to use it.
yeah,
Even Chat GPT and Grok or whatever it's called, the other ones, Claude. You've got to learn to use them, and I think it will come down to the same thing as sales. Whoever asks the best questions
yeah,
is going to get the best use of these tools.
yeah,
So, I feel like we live in a very fortunate age from a sales perspective. Like we've never been able to promote ourselves for free en masse so easily. I love the ecosystem that we can create around a personal brand. The majority of my leads for the business in the B2B space will come through my LinkedIn. And all I have to do is connect with you and then post. I don't need to send anything to you. I don't need to annoy you. I just need to post. And as long as it's valuable, leads will start to come in, and they do come in.
yeah.
So we live in a really interesting time. I think by the time my kids grow up to be sales professionals, who knows what it will look like? I've no idea.
Yeah, it's changing fast. We're in a very, very different time right now. That's for sure. Ryan, I've got 4 fun questions I want to ask you, but just before I do, you have got something very exciting that is about to happen. You haven't done this for a very long time. Do you want to tell our listeners about your in-person tour that's about to happen?
So last April, I had an amazing opportunity. I went over to Necker Island with Richard Branson for 5 days, and I had a revelation on that island that I was doing my clients a bit of a disservice. That we had our business model slightly wrong, so we changed the business model, which means now I have a bit more free time up my sleeve because I'm not traveling around like I used to. So what it means, for the first time since 2019, we're doing a free national tour. So we're doing a 1-day event in Perth, Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane in June this year. And it's basically the $20,000 corporate day that I used to do for corporate clients for free. So it's the same content that all these corporates thought that they needed fully tailored to them, which they didn't, because it's just about human beings. And I'm delivering that for free around the country. So we get asked all the time, when are you bringing this to Sydney or Melbourne? And I just didn't have the time before. So yeah, super excited to get on the road again.
I love it. So we're going to you've got a link for people to register for that. We're going to put that link in the show notes so people can grab that. On that though, we do have a lot of listeners in the US. How can they connect with you? How can they find out more about your training, your courses, your opportunities? Where do they go?
Yeah, amazing. The US has become a really good market for us in recent years. So nice to hear you on here. Hopefully it's been valuable. Grab me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Ryan Tuckwood Official. I'm pretty active across all those channels. And then swishsalescoaching.com.
Awesome. And we will put all of those links in the show notes for you guys to find. But do definitely follow. I love watching your content, Ryan. So much great stuff, lots of value, lots of tips, and lots of great stories as well. Don't forget, guys, that half the training is in the story, right? So watch. There's a process there. I love it. So I do want to ask you my 4 favorite questions. Have you got a couple more moments so I can ask you these?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So first one is this. What is your favorite book? I know you've already given us one, but favorite book for us to add to our accelerator book list?
It's actually quite a recent one. It's called Be Your Future Self Now by Benjamin Hardy. I don't know if you've read that.
Ooh, I haven't read it. I have heard of this one, so I'm going to add it to the list.
Can I give you 2?
Yeah, right.
So there's one before it, which it really works if you read them in this order.
Okay.
It's called Personality Isn't Permanent. And I wish I got given this many years ago. Personality Isn't Permanent. And then it leads into Be Your Future Self Now. I don't think they're supposed to go into each other, but I read them in that order and it was very good.
Really powerful. Okay, awesome. So Personality Isn't Permanent and Be Your Future Self.
Be Your Future Self Now.
Now, right, got it. Okay, I love it. So good. We will put them in the show notes. Next question is I love this one. We always get some really funny answers here. But if you could have a superpower, any superpower, what would it be and why?
I don't know. Like, I struggle with this. I think trying to understand what my kids really want in life would be a gift. If I could, when kids just say the most random things and they love your dinner one night and they don't love it the next night.
What happened in the last 24 hours?
Yeah. You give them exactly what they want and they didn't want it. So maybe read the kids, or even the ability to self-regulate instantly. It is such a skill. And if I could have just done that many years ago, I would have had less fear. I would have taken more action and maybe had some more success.
Just funny. I just got a mental image. You remember the movie with Mel Gibson of What Women Want, where he could hear.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, imagine if they made a movie about what kids want, and it was like the kids' version of that.
I picked up on the woman one. I'll just focus on the kids.
Yeah, just the kids. So do you know that they made a man's version of that movie and it totally tanked?
No way.
Tanked. So after Mel Gibson did the one about the women, they went and did another one about what men want, and no one cared. No one watched it.
That sounds about right.
But I think they should do another one, try again, but make it about what kids want.
What kids want. There you go. I'll be in it.
Yeah. I also think that what dogs want could be a really fun one.
Oh, yes, that meant superpower. My dog could talk. That would be good.
Yeah, I'd love to know what they were thinking half the time. I really would.
Yeah.
Your favorite quote, Ryan?
Richard Branson. The brave may not live forever, but the cautious never live at all.
Oh, I love that. So good.
Yeah.
And last question, but definitely the best one. If you could go back in time and say one thing to your past self, what would it be?
Roll the dice.
Ooh. Okay, this is from someone who's had some decision-making coaching, right? This is a C speaking.
So before I left, I know it's supposed to be quick fire, but before I left UK in 2010, I remember having a conversation with my dad. I was deciding on whether I was going to go. And I remember him saying to me, bearing in mind, he's now 6 or 7 years in, no, longer than 8 or 9 years in since he's had cancer, hasn't been able to work since. Mum and dad lost everything through his illness. And I remember him saying, Ryan, we never rolled the dice, right? We never had the chance to do anything. We were going to sell the house. We were going to get some money. And then he got hit with cancer at 43 years old. And I remember him saying to me, go roll our dice. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I'm trying to do it right now. I'm rolling some big dice and the dice keep getting bigger, but I wish I'd have done it a lot sooner.
Yeah. That's really awesome. I love that. So powerful. Ryan, you're an absolute wealth of experience and some incredible knowledge and wisdom has been shared today. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to honor us with your knowledge and your wisdom. I really appreciate you. And just a reminder to our listeners, go and get registered for one of his events. I'm going to go check them out. I'm super excited for this. But thank you again so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was fun.
Yeah, it's an honor. Thanks as well, of course, to our beautiful listeners for tuning in again to this episode. If you've heard something in here that for you has been game-changing, you want to share it, please share this podcast. It's a free resource that we provide, guys, for a reason. Let's impact as many people as we can. And of course, if you love this, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Thanks again, everyone, and bye for now. Thank you for joining us in this episode of the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. If you love listening and you found that this was helpful for your direct selling business, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also check out the recommended video that's popped up on your screen right here. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye for now.